Music Not Diving is brought to you by Acid. Head over to ac55id.com to check out the fastest growing electronic music marketplace. It doesn't matter if you're a label, an artist, just someone who's looking to buy music. This is a great place for you to be doing any of those things. 1 cent per stream is what they pay for all streaming on that platform, including for podcasts. So if you're watching this over there, then we're getting paid. So thanks for that. Basically, the way it works is similar to Bandcamp. So if you're a Bandcamp user and looking for something, an alternative, maybe an addition, something to spread yourself around in terms of the way you support artists, ac55id.com is an absolutely great place to do that. I would highly recommend them. We use them for Hot Flush recordings. You can support us over there if you wish. And yeah, they're just pretty great. And also they're supporting this podcast, right? So what more can you ask? Head over to ac55id.com to check them out.
This is Music Not Diving with Scuba.
Welcome to the show. I'm Scuba. This is Music Not Diving. One of the best things about doing this show for me is having the excuse to spend hours on end just listening to music. And, I do research for each of these episodes and sometimes it's reading stuff. But this week, I spent most of the time just listening to James Holden's catalogue. And it is, let me tell you, if you're not familiar, it is absolutely unbelievable. And the new stuff is really, really great. So the most recent record is called The Universe Will Take Care of You, and it's a collaboration with Waclaw Zimpel, who is a improvisational artist, I think it's fair to say. That is an unbelievable piece of work. And the previous album, which came out in 2023, is called, I need to read this, Imagine This is a High-Dimensional Space of All Possibilities, right? And actually, you will see, I have to read that off a piece of paper during the course of this interview because it is a difficult one to get right. But musically, it is absolutely outstanding. And, James is such an interesting musician. He's such an interesting producer, such an interesting guy as well, as we find out in the course of this conversation. He's a maths graduate, spends a lot of time writing software as well as making music these days. And he is someone who is, just fascinating in so many different ways. So this is a great episode. It was different, slightly different to how I was anticipating it going when I was researching it, but absolutely delivered. So it doesn't matter if you're a fan of James's music, it doesn't matter if you know James's music, he's a really interesting bloke to listen to talking, and we've got about an hour and a half now of basically him doing just that. So let's get into it, shall we? Just before we get into it though, a reminder that you can support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/ScubaOfficial. There are 2 tiers there, the more expensive of which gets you all of the music that we release on Hot Flush recordings. They both get you bonus content, however, and I'm doing a bonus podcast every 2 weeks, audio only, on different topics around the music industry. So that's a great way to support the show and also get more good stuff too. We'd also love it, and maybe even more so love it, if you just like this video, subscribe to the channel and do all of that good stuff. Okay, without further delay, let's head over to the studio and talk to James Holden.
Brought to you by AC55ID.
James Holden, welcome to the show.
Hello.
How you doing?
All right, thanks.
Good. I have a first question for you, James.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that you hate nightclubs so much? Because you do.
I don't.
I mean, you've said that you do before.
No, I'm sure I have. I'm sure.
You've been unequivocal in previous interviews about this.
Oh, man, I've been trying to be positive and you're telling me...
No, this is going back a number of years, to be fair.
Right, okay, cool. Nowadays, I try and be positive.
Okay.
And actually, looking back, I had the loveliest times in nightclubs. I really, from when I was a kid, and the excitement of the first one I sneaked into before I was old enough to get in them, and just that feeling of walking in the room and hearing the kick drum coming up the stairs or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, I loved that. I loved all those early experiences. I loved playing clubs. It was scary at first. I kind of hated it at first because it was so scary, and my hand would be shaking too much to drop the needle on the vinyl or whatever. And the first club I played at, they wouldn't give you a proper mixer with EQs because they didn't think you could trust DJs to
really
to not turn the bass up.
When was that? What was that?
That was Oxford. That was when I was a student.
Okay.
So it was the Zodiac, which is the Carling,
I've heard of that.
It's the Carling whatever now, or O2 or whatever.
Right.
And anyway, I had a great time. It was all really nice. I had a really nice... I can't be... I mean, it wasn't all really nice. There were bits you know what it's like. Sometimes you turn up and it's like, why have they booked me to play here?
It's funny because you mentioned the sound of the guitar coming out. It says the worst sound in the world is the sound of an empty nightclub when you're going into it. So when you go in for a show and you know what it is, because as soon as you heard it once, it's stuck in your mind. But you know it's going to be empty when you just hear the noise of a sound system when there's no one on the dance floor. The most soul destroying thing I think ever.
Yeah, that does mean you can then if I'm playing to 3 people, I'll play I'll play what I want to hear.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. But there was definitely a point at which, by the sound of things, it was no longer.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I found very difficult about that job, and that I guess the expectations on a DJ are different to the expectations when you play a live show. And that change I really enjoy, and I could never go back ever. I just think it's yeah.
And that was a hard pivot.
So there was a moment where I was doing both things, because I just put out that Inheritors album, and I decided to do a tour of playing like all night in the clubs where I thought, I love this club, I'll play all night. And actually it was quite a short list of clubs, that it was like 8 that I wanted to do that in, like Corsica, I can't remember where else, but yeah. And I just loved that. That was sort of felt like a bit like, oh, maybe this is me hitting my peak in terms of that activity, that like playing the whole set. And I really love playing the early stuff, 100 BPM, that kind of stuff, and like building it up. I just those were really fun sets to do. And like, yeah, it was like the pinnacle of all the work I'd put into sort of making this collection that was all key matched and learning the techniques and building hardware to do it and everything. And then realizing there's only 8 clubs that you want to do that in, that sort of made me think a bit. And then I was doing both things. I was playing live shows a little bit, because I'd done this support tour for Atoms for Peace, and then I was playing a few live shows, and I was also DJing. And there's one weekend where I think it was my first live show after the support tour in Belgium. And then after that, I was going to drive to Berlin and play Panorama Bar. Pretty exciting weekend.
Right.
I left my
DJ Panorama Bar, you mean?
Yeah. I left my record bag at home.
Okay.
And it was like, that's your subconscious telling you something, James, isn't it? If you're not that bothered about Panorama Bar.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Take that. I felt like, don't take that space anymore. Like, it's really, I feel it's such a privilege to be in the booth playing music to people. If you're not 100% behind it, just don't do it. It's, it's tough. You've got to find a different job.
Right.
But I don't ever want to be a fraud or a parasite on this thing. The scene the good bit of the scene is still really beautiful thing. And I feel like I have to respect that really deeply.
Right. Yeah, okay. I mean, to what extent did starting to play live, because when did you do the first live set?
So the first time I played an instrument live on stage as an adult was Caribou invited me to do their vibration ensemble. So I had my modular, and Marshall Allen was there on one of the shows, like squawking at me. That was incredible.
Okay.
And I felt like, that was like just before, it was around that time, like 2013 or something. And then that was just before, and then Tom York sent me this email, after The Inheritors came out, saying, do you want to support us in the States? I was like, well, I can't play live, but I'm not going to say no to that, am I? So I figured it out, and that's been, I mean, that opened a door to a thing, and it's such a rewarding and interesting thing, like playing live music. When I make records, it's always been like this quite live process, so it felt quite natural to start doing that. And when I started doing that in front of people, I realized this is me now. Like, I guess that's
that album, that was your second album, right?
Yeah, like the first one I didn't really think of as a real album, but I suppose it is now in context. But
I mean, that record is very well, it's not really dance music, a lot of it, or something, or club music. I mean, was that a conscious because I mean, I suppose what I was trying to get to the bottom of was which came first. I mean, did you play live to then make that stuff, or was it playing that stuff live that kind of led more wanting to play that stuff that led to the live set?
I see what you mean. But, it's like it just came out that way in the studio. I think I was trying to make. I think I already had this idea that like dance music doesn't have to obey any of the conventions of dance music to still be dance music. That when I was DJing in that time, I was playing like Marley and Hunter's music in the middle of a set and mix it into Baby Ford, and people wouldn't know where one started and the other ended. And it's like, you don't need a drum machine for it to be dance music. It can be just hippies and shakers, and people will dance to it as long as they're the right people.
Okay. That's another story.
I'm not even being snobby with that. It's just like, you've got to find your people to play to.
Yeah, sure.
That sounded a bit negative.
No, you've got to find your audience. That's absolutely,
yeah.
Right.
And I guess a bit of my life's work is finding my people. It's kind of, I don't really want to be huge. I just want to find my people. And
that's a really interesting thing, actually, because I mean, one of the things we kind of like investigated on the show previously was the degree to which dance music is the genre, to what extent people are fans of the genre as opposed to being fans of the people making the music, right? And there's a relatively small number of acts in dance music who have been able to find their own audience and have an audience which is kind of specific, and some of it comes from the kind of people who are fans of dance music as a genre, but then there's other constituents of their audience too who come from other places, which is no doubt is your audience, right? Yeah. Definitely. Talk about that. How do you
I mean, in a way, that's a challenge when you're playing in the context of dance music, and some people are just there. I just come to a club and I want to hear a DJ and doing what I expect a DJ to do.
Yeah.
I mean, do you know what pathological demand avoidance is?
No, carry on.
It's an autism symptom of like, if someone really wants you to do something, that's the last thing I'm doing.
Right.
I really like.
Wow, that sounds like me.
So the guy at the front who, like, you know, you'd be playing a club and some guy would come up to the front and be like, I put an ambient track on. Just, you should go home, mate. You've come to the wrong club. Because I'm not playing to the guy who's a fan of the concept of dance music. I'm playing to the people who've come to see me, because that seems like the respectful, sort of fruitful.
But what about people who want to hear the Nathan Fake edit?
They can listen to it on Spotify or whatever. Like, or there's loads of other DJs that'll play that.
Right. You're right. Okay.
It's like, some people, like, if people came expecting that, then they want me to be a thing that I'm not, I guess. And I am just, I guess, like, the point of life is to figure out who you are and be it and see where that goes, and not pretend to be someone else or try and please people too. Like, I want to please people, but the way I want to do it, I don't want to work in McDonald's.
Well,
I mean, maybe this bad attitude will lead me to working in McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're a strong manager, James. Someone to tell you what to do. So that record, which kind of sort of inadvertently gave birth to the live set and to I guess the kind of the version of yourself which you have I suppose gradually become. And we were talking downstairs off camera about you feeling a little bit I don't know if lost is the right word, a little bit kind of unsure as to your current position. But I mean, it sounds like you've been in that position before. So the not wanting to DJ anymore, I suppose, was another example of that sort of feeling slightly uncomfortable, or maybe that you'd finished doing the thing that you were doing.
Yeah, it's fine. Like, definitely there was maybe I could have stopped a bit earlier even, I guess. It's, I mean, at the moment, the discomfort I feel is more like, I just don't know what I'm going to do that's original, that's next, I guess. That's maybe...
Well, that's another question I have written down.
It's a hard one, isn't it? I mean, I was in the studio the other day playing with something, and I got this sort of rotating arpeggio. It's lovely. And it's like, I knew, like, oh yeah, this would work. Just put a bass line, that's the ostinato, put a bass line under it, it'll be a lovely drop. I just felt like, I'm just like... Like, you know that feeling when you're watching someone play kind of obvious music and the and it happened, like you see it coming towards you, and then it happens and you feel like, ugh. Like,
but all music, all kinds of music, all genres of music, going back to different periods of classical music, they all have their tropes.
Yeah,
they all have their conventions, which are what makes them that kind of music.
Yeah.
Right, so by definition, all music has this to some degree, right? But it can feel really constricting, can't it?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, because really, the truth of it is, the inside is where it's interesting anyway. You can be a whole bundle of tropes, and there can be something in the core of it that's special and unique. But it's, yeah, I think I always get this feeling between records of just being like, oh, I'm lost in the desert now, I'll never make another record.
Right.
And then it happens, it's fine. But I just have to go sort of digging for something that'll be potentially fruitful. Yes.
Talk about the new record, because that's a collaborative effort with Waclaw Zimpel.
Yeah.
Talk about him. He sounds like an interesting character and a talented bloke.
Yeah, he's great. So this again stems from, I was actually after The Inheritors. So the record after The Inheritors, I did The Animal Spirits. And around the time that came out, I discovered this record, Zimpel and Jolek. I was Zimpel and Ziolek, but Jolek is meant to be pronounced. And I was obsessed with that record that year. It was my favorite record of the year. It was 4 tracks, all really long, and between jazz and trance and krautrock and folk music, and kind of really beautiful, really sort of emotional kind of record, but not overstated or anything. And I was just like so I saw that he was playing. We were playing Rewire Festival in Holland, and I saw he was on the lineup, and I just went looking for him. Like I'm not that, fairly shy, I guess, as a person, so I don't usually go looking for people I'm a fan of, but I just loved this so much I thought I'll face the cringe and go and find it. And went looking for him, and he was looking for me to say the same thing, to do the same, like, I really love it, like, this is my record of the year. And so we just had this kind of
eyes locked across the dance floor,
and we got on all right at that point, and kind of, it's like we're coming in different directions. He's come from like jazz and classical training, and his records up till that point, he'd worked with engineers to kind of realize his ideas, and he'd been starting to learn production himself. And I'd been coming the other way of kind of feeling like I knew about production, but sort of things like live playing felt like something that I hadn't really grown into fully or something. And we just kind of met and shared information. He's taught me a lot about Hindustani music or Carnatic music, jazz, obviously.
What's his main instrument?
Clarinet is the main one, but he, like me, he learned violin as a kid and then ditched it and then went on to, and he plays sax. He plays like anything you can blow in, he can play very much. It's incredible. And I guess we just, like, we did that EP together, and it was easy. It was super easy just to kind of meet and just play around, really, without any kind of pressure. And we did 1 song a day on the EP. It just happened, just flowed. And a couple of them were like, oh, this is maybe my favorite thing I've done for years or something. This record has been, it was like even better, this record, kind of, because we did some, how did it work? We did some live shows because the EP came out then, it was the pandemic, so our live shows were a bit stunted by that. But it was the nice thing to be doing in that time, because we did a few sort of distance shows and whatever. And it was the most improvisational thing that I'd done on stage. Let's talk about improvisation as a little sidetrack.
Totally.
I think DJs are more improvisational than, going back to why do I hate clubs, DJs are great. Like, they're more improvisational than most of the live acts that I see.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's
an amazing thing, isn't it? It's like just people making decisions in a moment, responding to the crowd.
Yeah.
Something really special about that. And
really.
Vatsav has that. He's come from, he spent years in Chicago playing jazz clubs to 5 people every night, just completely free shit the whole time.
Amazing. Education, right?
Yeah, exactly. And how to push through that, and how to find something new every night and stuff. It's brilliant. But in between, I've got a friend who's a sound engineer at a big London venue, and he was telling me that a lot of bands that come through with stems of everything. So there's one lot of faders for the stems that they've recorded in the studio, one lot of faders for the live mics, and if someone's having a bad day,
oh wow,
swap it out.
Wow.
And they're playing to a click, so it doesn't matter. No one's ever going to know.
The click, yeah. I think the click is the enemy of certainly of I almost said proper music there, non-dance music.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's an interview that Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins, where he talks about Cherub Rock in particular, and how that record would just be impossible to do with a click track, even though it's basically the same tempo the whole way through. The way it pushes and pulls, it's just not but as soon as the click is in there, it's gone.
Dead. And I mean, I did all this research stuff on human timing some time ago now, or rather, I met this scientist who'd done some research on it, and I did some maths to make a plugin out of that. And yeah, it's that like when real people play together, it pushes and pulls. I make a mistake, you listen to my mistake and compensate, try and match it. And then you make a mistake, I hear your mistake, and there's this it's chaos. It's like a fractal kind of chaos theory kind of thing that ripples through. You can't fake it. There's no way to fake it apart from to do it the way that humans do it. This kind of iterative
which
process.
is why the humanized function never really sounds
human, so there's the what's it called, enabled Max for Live group humanizer that I did uses this algorithm, and now they licensed it to a plugin company who've made like a simplified version of it that you can use. But
and how good is it without one?
I mean, I used that on everything since I've used it, and I don't record to, like, when I record stuff now, I don't record to a grid ever. Ever. Like, I just don't. Ableton is a tape machine to me and I ignore the grid in it completely. Kind of.
So sorry, how does it work then? The plugin.
So the plugin, I mean, it does work on, if you have gridded MIDI and you put it in, it just moves. It has one instance for each part. And kind of the instances listen to, this part's played a little bit late, so I'll play a little bit late. And so they're all like floating timing around the grid.
But they react to each other.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Because that's how it is. It's like a listening process. And that's what live music is. And improvising and DJing, you're listening to the crowd, they're listening to you. It's this kind of feedback loop. It's like a source of richness or something. It takes it out of being something that you scripted or planned and into something that's like alive. Like feedback to me is the definition of something that's alive. Looping back around to this thing of like improv, of like being really free, of not doing a scripted thing on stage. Like the first time around doing the live set, that was like my main thought. Like, if I'm going to not DJ and do this instead, this has to be more live than that. So it was quite a challenge to and I wanted to take the modular on stage, and it's, that's a pain in the ass in many ways. So that's been, this line of thought has kept me busy for 10 years. And this line of thought is the thing that I still have unlimited enthusiasm for now, and I feel like it's what I'm working on at the moment, is thinking about this kind of stuff, about how do you like really flow on stage and in the like turning the studio into feeling like a stage jam session or something, like finding
I've had a couple of conversations actually on the show in the previous non-video version of this about on stage live jams involving numbers of people. So with Sebastian Mellart, with the Circle of Live thing, and also with Speedy J, and the name of his one, which I'm currently blanking on. But his one, they actually, in both of those cases, they have a bunch of people, typically like 6, 7, 8 people, and then what I suppose as a director, and it's usually Sebastian, and Speedy J's real name is, I'm blanking on that entire episode.
Joachim, isn't it?
Yeah, Joachim, that's it. Exactly. And they're the sort of they're the conductor essentially, sort of master ceremony sort of thing, and they're kind of like, bringing things in, and like, and in both of those cases they go on for hours. They do it for 6, 7, 8 hours, 1 hour for each person, but super fascinating. And my first question to them is like, how do you start? Where does it start? Actually, one of the best things I've ever seen, one of my best ever dance music experiences in the crowd, was watching Atom and Tobias play completely improvised live thing, which was just, transcendently brilliant. Just incredible start to finish. And what was amazing about that is they didn't look at each other once during the thing. They were it's just two German dudes looking at their machines and just vibing off or just purely off the music.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Anyway, so how does it start when you guys did it?
Yeah, I don't know how we start. Starting is the weird. Yeah. Because the start determines the whole. We've started things in different ways every time. But like, what am I gonna with? So I suppose finishing like with Waclaw, what I found is it's just a play, and I haven't got room for the evaluative bit of my own brain to get in the way. I guess my own brain is the reason why I don't make many records.
Right, okay. It's just huge obstacle in the path.
Oh, fucking hell, yes. Yeah, so with him, it's kind of very...
So it's freeing,
It's
basically.
very freeing and very positive. And like, if I sat down to do any of the things that are on the new record, I don't think I could. There are things it just happened. And some of them, when we came to play a live show, is I don't know what the notes of this are. Like, we're going to have to sort of sit down with Ableton and work out, press the button where it works out the notes for you.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but this new record was basically jams.
Yeah, like literally just sitting down, and sometimes some of the songs were like, I've got these chords, what do you think of them? And then it turns
And that's how you
into
get
jam.
started.
Yeah, or like it starts from like a technical idea, like I'm going to build a looper, but in the chain of the looper is like a sidechain compressor that this other thing's in, or something like that. And then I'll put you in there and I'll put a pitch shift on you or something. And that, like a little discussion like that, 10 minutes wiring it up. And then we just sort of, something's happening. And kind of off we go.
Right. Okay. And this is satisfying artistically by the sound of things. Very satisfying.
Yeah, really. And that period of my life, I got bored of myself. Yeah, the sound, and it's a bit smug when you've done that's what I hate about it. When I listened to that first album and the stuff around that time, sometimes you'd hear like a really cool little run of edits and it lands and you're like, that's a bit smug, isn't it? Like,
But actually, because that is a question I had actually, because I mean the big difference between your early material and the new stuff is the early stuff is pretty technical.
Yeah,
actually, like and self-consciously almost technical, right?
Yeah.
It's flashy, right? Virtuosic.
Yeah. Which is something it wasn't intended to be virtuosic. It was just, I didn't think it was finished until it was like just bubbling with details. And now I get the detail from the chaos. So I don't have to sort of work it, like the work has gone in building the chaos system that makes the detail or something. And yeah, like I don't believe in virtuosic as a virtue. It's not a virtue. It's a madness.
Right. Okay.
And that world of classical music. The guy who mastered this record, he also does mastering for classical music.
It's not a good thing in of itself, perhaps. Yeah. But maybe it can have its value.
It's like so. This guy he showed me the score of a string quartet with the marks for all the edits where this classical recording had been tidied up.
Okay.
And it's just like hundreds of edits on 3 minutes of music, way more than a pop record.
Right.
And these are people who've like spent all their life training to play perfectly.
I didn't realize.
And then they've got to do it 10 times because it's possible, everybody does it. And it's a bit like face smoothing filters on Instagram or something, because everybody's used to seeing a perfect face. Then you suddenly get body dysmorphia, and the same happens to classical musicians. Wow. They're all on beta blockers because they're so stressed about being perfect. It's miserable existence.
My mind has been blown by this. Wow, it didn't even occur to me that they would do that on that kind of music. But yeah, I suppose so. If the whole point of it is to be, it is to achieve that level of performance.
And then what is it? Like, you're not old classical music back in, before recorded music. Yeah. Classical musicians would improvise, would around, would have a good time, would try their own little twists on stuff. That was part of it. And now it's this dead, ossified fossil.
That's interesting, because I mean, I can't remember the name of the instrumentalist in question, which is annoying, but I went to see a performance of a Beethoven piece, and was then having a conversation about this instrumentalist in question, and was told that when this guy performs that, he does so many embellishments, so many extra trills of the kind of thing you're talking about, that it's that some people almost find it unrecognizable. But I mean, but then doesn't do it when they record. So watching him perform live is sort of a completely different. Right?
That's cool. That's a really nice. Yeah, that's a cool thing to see. Then, yeah,
totally.
Good. So I think truth is really important. I don't want to be making music that's a pretense of my virtuosity. I want to just show what I actually can and can't do in a record, and that the bits I can't do are as interesting as what I can do. I think it's like the bits where it falls apart. There's a bit on the record with Waclaw.
Imperfections absolutely are a feature, not a bug, right?
And like capturing a moment is everything to me. Like that's what this record with Waclaw is. This kind of feeling of like you're in this moment with us. That our recording technique, I'll tell you about that. That's fun. Like it's Luke Abbott's idea, really. I've got speakers all around my studio, like some I found by the bins, a PA speaker, a guitar amp, my monitors, like everything, like all round. And you literally put one signal source to each speaker. So if there's a part, it's got its own speaker. And then in the middle of a room, a pair of Coles mics in a Blumline, like figure of 8 kind of thing. So you can get a really nice stereo kind of room sound. But you're just in the middle of it. And it just sounds great to be surrounded by the sounds. Like you're not worrying about, that frequency is clashing with that because that frequency is over there and that frequency is over there. So you don't get distracted into thinking about mix nonsense. You're just like in this soupy sort of sea of sound. And then the record kind of feels like that. You're in this moment with us. There's a bit, I can't remember which track it is, but I knock a teacup out. Like I'm playing something, Waclaw just comes in on like a Rhodes, like keyboard solo, and I'm just like, he's not done that in the previous, while we've been working up to this point. It's me. And I'm like flapping my hands like an excited autistic child and knock the teacup over. And it's like, well, that moment is never happening again. And so when you hear that in the record, you're hearing like the moment of creation, the reaction to that creation, the attempt to like hold your shit together. And to me, that's more interesting than the stuff I did before, where it was, 3 up till 3 a.m. pushing the mouse around and micro edits.
Yeah, totally. Is that the same recording method that you use for the record that has a long name? Imagine This Is a High Dimensional Space of All Possibilities.
I did use that quite a lot as well in that one as well, but that one's more of a sort of solo thing, so it was more of my own indulgence in the room, just kind of enjoying. Okay,
we'll talk about that in a moment. So the question I had was with regards to the conflict, if that's the right word, between improvisation and songwriting, composition. To what extent is that a conflict, and how has that manifested itself in the making of this recent record?
So, that is it can be a conflict, or like certain things can lead you. It's related, but it's different. I was saying to Waclaw, we were getting stoned in the studio, and I was saying to him that I think when I get stoned, I tend to go for simpler things. That I'm never going to write a sort of 15 chord kind of big movement. I'm never going to write anything that feels, composed. It's always going to be loopy jams if I'm stoned. And he was like, and what's wrong with that? And he's like, he's played, atonal jazz and classical stuff and everything. And this value system that says like really clever music is better than dumb music is wrong. Just like dumb music is great.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
so this comes back to why I don't hate nightclubs.
Okay. Wow. That's the title of this podcast episode. I don't hate nightclubs with James Holden.
We did on the last tour of this Imagine the High Dimensional Space Wall. On that tour, we did a few nightclub shows as well as a load of venue shows. And what's that place in Munich? There's this really cool place. Yes. Amazing sound system. Yeah. That was so fun. We were playing it in front of a sound system with Camillo playing tablas, and it should have been impossible. And it was just like the most fun. It was really good fun.
Yeah, it was.
So there's different attentions though. That's in a club, to some extent, people pay more attention to the music. They get deeper. They might take more drugs than people in a venue and get really sucked into the music. And they really, I remember dancing continuously for hours on end, just completely tranced out in the music. And that is kind of more listening than, you go to Cafe Oto, 80% of the audience will say something to their friend during the half-hour concert or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And so that's more deep and more attention. But at the same time, sort of people go, oh yeah, I really love that DJ because of a record he played. and they haven't really sort of, it feels like you haven't really sort of fully got to the bottom of it. You've like really engaged with it, and also not engaged with like the meta layer of it or something.
Yeah.
Whereas when you go to band shows, it seems like people, oh, I know his favorite breakfast.
Right. Yeah, right.
Maybe,
exactly.
I don't know. Is that a?
Well,
I don't know. Am I reaching?
People have a different relationship with the music, don't they? When they have this perceived relationship with the artist.
Yeah.
Right. So when you really love someone, a pop star, or whatever. Like I'm trying to think of there's an example in my own listening experience where I've definitely been really into bands before. But yeah, when I was a teenager, for sure, I loved like Metallica and Guns N' Roses or whatever. And I remember going to see Guns N' Roses 92 or 93 as a kind of 13, 14-year-old, and just being so starstruck by Slash and Axl Rose, right? And that absolutely affects your experience of performance, right? Of the music and of the songs, right? This kind of brings us back to dance music and people's relationship with dance music and with DJs. But certain DJs absolutely have that relationship with their fans, or people have that relationship with DJs. Yeah, don't they?
It's weird. I found that was a bit I found weird or uncomfortable or something. The parasocial relationships and the.
I've got to ask you a question. In a previous interview, you talked about a conversation that you had with two famous DJs who you didn't mention, and they said something which was really bad, but you didn't even say, well, I understand not wanting to name the DJs involved, but you didn't actually say what it was that they said, which was so bad. Do you remember this? And can
no, right.
okay.
I mean, I've got a list of, some of the things I heard DJs say was just, I can't say on the record, they were so bad.
Come on,
so no,
give me an example.
No, I just don't want to get into it.
Okay.
Because some of them should be in prison.
Right.
That's why.
Okay. That's probably.
There was one dinner I had with one DJ who said some stuff that made me really uncomfortable, and I just distanced myself from that person. And the other person who was at the dinner is now cancelled for being a rapist. It's not really very pleasant or interesting, is it?
Yeah, no.
I felt like things like that were like really like, oh, who the f*** are you hanging out with, James? Like, what? Have you made the right life choices if you're in the having dinner in a nice restaurant with these guys? Like, so it's that. That was a part of it, and these experiences of just feeling like I'm kind of a different person to these people that I'm with, and it's, I don't know, not even being snobbish, just I'm just interested in different stuff or whatever. Yeah. It sounds.
Sorry, that was a sidebar. We were talking about the relationship that people have with musicians and their music.
And
which is the artist that you've most had that sort of psychological relationship? Would you say is there one that stands out in your mind? That's someone that you really love.
Interesting. Like when I was young, I definitely had this kind of fan obsession of like just wanting to know everything about, particularly Beth Gibbons and Portishead. And that whole, like, I was just obsessed with Portishead for a while. Well, really, like, still am, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, I suppose I'm not a very social person, so I don't have the parasocial part.
Okay. Fair enough.
Like, really, and it's weird when you meet your heroes. I met Terry Riley. I just feel embarrassed about what I said to him. I shouldn't have wasted his time.
Okay.
So then, like, in a way, it's better not to.
Yeah, maybe.
And then someone like I met Steve Hillage and Miquette, and they're so nice and sweet, and like that was like a real like, yes, do meet your heroes.
He's been on the podcast.
Yeah, he's really good, isn't he?
He was great. I actually didn't know much about him before, and other than System 7.
Yeah.
I thought he was just a great guy, to be honest.
He just seems like a really nice man.
Yeah.
He's got this passion for what he's doing. He's really inspiring, like someone who's managed to do that many different things through their life. It's like Yeah, and they're great. Like, even like their new stuff is in a different world to what most of what I listen to is, but I still love it.
It's good.
It's got that.
Definitely good.
Yeah.
We didn't finish the question about songwriting and improvisation. We got
because I
sidetracked there.
digressed onto being stoned with Vasav, didn't I? Yeah. Improvisation starts from something you've prepared. For me, starts from something you've prepared, because I have to build the system in the computer. So what I tend to do in writing music is wire up some stuff that's got a bit of life to itself. So what I was talking about with Vasav, making a looper with a compressor in it and some stuff to wobble it around and whatever, then that's got its own life, and you can push against it and pull and see what happens and see what you can get out of it. Or little sort of generative MIDI systems that make you play a chord and it does some twinkles off it. That stuff. So to me, that's the composing.
Right.
You're not sitting down with with the piano roll and doing some in there, but you're preparing the ground or something.
It's creating an environment.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like making a violin. I feel like my job is I make a violin every couple of weeks, and then I learn to play it, and then I take it to bits again.
Right. Okay. So you haven't mentioned programming, because I mean, the way you talk about that, it sounds like you're physically wiring up bits of kit, which is some of it, but actually you're writing
so now it's
lines of code, aren't you?
Yeah. So when was it? It was, yeah. So when I did the first live tours, I built lots of Max for Live devices, and I had the modular synth on stage, a huge Ableton set, and it was really stressful because Ableton is an amazing piece of software, but it's designed for one kind of way of thinking about a live set. Really, it kind of does some other things if you push it, but it starts to bulge and and that worked, and it was fun, and I felt quite free in the sets, but kind of limited. It was kind of all the songs are loops anyway, to some extent, like wonky loops and polyrhythmic loops and whatever, but they're just kind of a thing that goes on and up and down and then it stops, and kind of
and clip that up.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was, and I was playing with musicians, so it always felt like I'm dancing around them, and it's fun. But it was really, when I did the Animal Spirits, the first live show with the Animal Spirits, my Ableton set used 4 gig of memory, which was as much as my laptop had at that point. It was completely full, took a minute and a half to load, and it would crash after half an hour every time. So we got halfway through the set, it crashed, and I was like, well, got a minute now for jokes.
Yeah, right.
Chat. Yeah. Well, so I realized I had to change how I was doing it. And I'd been thinking a lot about sort of expanding what I was doing with these Max for Live patches, because they were little replications of what I was doing in the big modular. In the big modular, I'd patch something where it's an envelope goes into a scale quantizer, so as it goes up, it's picking different notes of the scale.
Can you just briefly explain for the lay person what a Max for Live device is? And
okay. So Max is a programming language where you patch together boxes, but it's more mathsy than synthy, really. Max for Live lets you build little programs that live like a plugin in Ableton. So you can have, in my live set, I'd have little sequences that I'd made. Renata, the song Renata off that Inheritors album is based about, I saw the launch video for Make Noise made a module called Rene. So that looks fun. I'll just make my own version of it. I made it wrong, and because I made it wrong, it made that song. Right. And so, but then I had to recreate this kind of wrong sequencer because there's nothing else that does that. So I recreated that little patch, and it would make lights go on my controller and stuff. And then I'd have synth voices, I can't really take this whole bit of modular with me on tour, so I'll try and make a clone of it in the computer, whatever. And it's fun. It's a good way of working, but it hits a lot.
You have a maths background. I should probably
I am
emphasize
quite lucky. I've got a maths degree, not a very good maths degree, but
okay.
And so,
but you are highly numerate. I think it's pretty fair to say.
Yeah, I'm lucky in that respect. It goes with music, I guess. It's or just having worms in your brain goes with music, I guess. It's the truth of it.
There is correlation there with people who are good at that kind of stuff and also do music.
Yeah. But I think there might be there's a correlation between ice cream sales and shark attacks at the beach, but there's a third factor.
Okay. Right, yeah, you actually got to get in the water to be,
I started building a big Max patch to do this live set. And I had this idea of it's going to be a flowy thing where you've got your own kind of mad sequences. do things really quickly. If someone comes in your studio, you can jam with them really quick. Because in Ableton, you're digging in menus, kind of setting things up. It ends up feeling very mousy, and you're in the computer. And I wanted something where it feels like I'm not in the computer, I'm in the room with my friend, or I'm on the stage with the people rather than mousing. And it's been I wasn't a very good coder, and I'm still not a very good coder, but it's come along over a few versions. And then about a year ago, I released this thing called Benny, which is out now. It's like our first version of it is available for free. And it's a max patch, but it just looks like a piece of software, and it's a big, like a patch together boxes that, like a kind of modular audio thing. But the boxes can be bits of software that are in the computer, or they can be a module in your hardware, and you've kind of pre-configured it so that it knows, this filter's on these outputs. So you can just drop that filter.
So does it sit as a plugin in Ableton?
No, it's a whole separate piece of software.
Okay.
So it runs completely standalone. And I started thinking about the philosophy of what your music software is presupposing when you open it. And when you open Ableton, or open any piece of music software, they all have a blank canvas page with a picture of, this is where your MP3 goes. Like, you're going to fill the time from 0 to 10 with some music. Yeah. Then you're going to upload it to the internet, and then Daniel Ek is going to give you no money for it. So what's the point? So, and sort of that end point,
to be continued at that particular point, but carry on.
Yeah, that end point, like, and I remember Ableton invited me to do a talk at their Loop conference, or not, to be on a panel about this idea of finishing songs. And sort of the morning of the panel, I realized, I don't know if finishing the song is the goal, really. The goal is the fun, or like, it's like playing. And like, there's this kind of, someone I know was taking the piss out of all his modular synth friends about how, like, oh yeah, you never finish songs, you're just playing around.
Just endless jam.
Just endless jam. You're always buying new modules, playing around. I made this hit record out of just Omnisphere presets. But he said that 5 years ago, and he said recently to me that he was a bit bored of making records. So,
yeah.
Like, the end goal is, I mean, that's, sure, we need to eat or whatever, but it's kind of making product, making content that's not the goal of your life. Like, your goal of your life is to have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of what I mean, or sort of part of what I was getting at with the using the term songwriting as opposed to competition, right? Because dance music isn't, I would say they're not songs, they're tunes. You should never say a dance record is a song, unless it actually does contain a song,
like a verse and a chorus.
Yeah, right. It's a tune, and a tune can be that sort of modular, endless jamming stuff. Those are tunes, right? But and they're not. They can be products in quotation marks, but generally speaking, that's not really what it is. Now, a song, the song form is so embedded into the industry of recorded music, right? That's basically the history of it to a large extent. And obviously the song predates recorded music, and like, it's not inherently a product, but it does lend itself to a sort of a package, isn't it?
Yeah.
The song, and it kind of lends itself to that, and fits into the industry in a way which the kind of dance music we're talking about anyway, doesn't really, right? And that is a problem for people. Well, it's a problem if you're trying to make money, make a living anyway, as you've just alluded to. Talk about that. Does that make sense? What are your observations on that?
I think, I guess what it's making me think about is this, Brian Eno is as wrong as often as he's right, but there's a quote of his about maybe recorded music is a blip.
Yeah.
That like whale oil was a 50-year industry, maybe recorded music is a 50-year industry.
I very much think that's reality. Yeah. It's and AI is basically accelerating the end of that blip.
It's a curse.
But Kerry, what was going to be the?
So I don't know what the point of that is, where I was getting to with. So from,
I guess music is a product. I suppose, is it?
But also when you record it and you share it with people, that's how you communicate. That's a much more effective way to communicate with people than go out and play to them 100 at a time in small venues or something. Right. Yeah. But I think when I don't know what I think. This is interesting because I don't really know what I think. So that's, I'll have the answer for you tomorrow. If you
no, I mean, but it's something I kind of wrestle with, like, the extent to which recorded music, and, you know, when I say recorded music, I mean recorded music as in the industry of recorded music, the extent to which that's art as by default, whether it can, whether the kind of commercial aspect of it or the product aspect of it precludes what is made from being art. The terminology that the music industry uses of artists, as in anyone who makes a record is an artist. You know, obviously it's a sort of abbreviation of recording artist, which is maybe something slightly different, but it's never used like that. You know, all of these things, this kind of stuff has just been occupying my brain for the last few months, and it's just, and I don't have any hard answers either. And I'm putting you on the spot here by asking you to react to it. But I mean, I have a big problem with all of this, and the constant discussion of how bad streaming is, as any of you said, you know, get paid, like this, it seems to be coming to a head. And as you say, Brian Eno's quote about, you know, is it a blip, seems like probably is.
Yeah, but maybe I mean, I don't think we should take the way our society is right now as particularly indicative of the future, because it's not going to hold like this.
Sure, yeah.
It's not going to, like, it feels
quick.
quite unstable at the moment. And like through my life, I guess we're the same age. So when we started in music, there was before we started in music, it was dominated by 3 companies or something. There was a window where we got our beginnings, I guess. Before that, where a huge independent industry grew and became viable, and there was this other way of existing that wasn't part of just being part of a corporate conglomerate. And gradually over my life, the middle class of musicians has shrunk to almost nothing,
particularly over the last 10 years.
And I don't mean middle class as in the middle income category of musicians who are making money but not superstars. Making enough for a living but not famous. And those of that group has shrunk to nothing almost. And I don't know. So where's it go? Is that it? Is that where it ends up? I feel like in a lot of other places, this middle section of society is being squeezed out, that you're either, and the point of AI for the rich people that own it is to accelerate that process and to put themselves on the right side of that divide. I think. I don't know. Yeah, I mean,
the episode of this podcast that I recorded directly before this one was with a therapist, and I read a bunch of research which turned out to be pretty heavily skewed towards critical theory as preparation for that episode. And that, by the way, that's coming out after this, so this is going to make absolutely no sense to anyone. But in that reading, I came across something which a theory, and I can't remember the name of the person who put it forward, but basically we're saying that the more choice there is, which is to say, like, the more, in this instance, the more music there is, the more inequality there will be, because it will inherently make it more difficult for people to search through it. So the things that are at the top will get disproportionately more and more and more of the attention of the eyeballs and the ears of the people involved. So the abundance that digital music and also social media and everything has provided people is inherently,
that's a part
like,
of it.
It's inherently kind of like fueling this inequality within society, but also specifically within music and the arts. Which was a bit of a kind of like, yes, that seems obvious, but actually, wow, having it here put like that, it's like,
So if we have
absolutely.
if that says that if we have infinite content like AI slop available wherever you want it, then we'll have like infinite inequality.
Yeah, right. Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yikes.
I don't know how we got here.
Yeah, it feels depressing, but there are things in the world that make me feel really the opposite feeling to that.
Okay, go on.
Like, kind of, like social media is really depressing, but have you heard of Mastodon and the Fediverse? Like, I find that quite inspiring.
I've never been on there. Actually, explain.
It took me a while to get into it because it's not algorithmic, so it's not pushing things into you. So you've got to find people on it, and I feel like I'm still kind of looking for people to follow. So it's not instantly entertaining, but I'm finding loads of people who've climbed over that hump to get into this space, and they've all got the same political values, or aligned, similar kind of values, because they've decided not to be on something owned by an American blockchain company or whatever. And it kind of feels like maybe the whole of society, that's too big for me that's a high project. I can't engage with that. I can't understand why people do that or act like that or vote for him or think that.
Sure.
But I can find my people and this era of like everybody has to be on Twitter and there's one central conversation every day. Oh, it's trending. This guy's cancelled today. This guy's Twitter's main character today.
Yep.
I remember when someone I knew was the main character.
Right.
So awful.
Oh man.
So like,
I've been the main character before.
I remember, it's
not fun.
Yeah, I bet it wasn't. Yeah.
Not fun at all.
Yeah. Awful. But like, none of those people know you. That was what struck me about. So there's when there was someone
That's what's so bad about it. Like,
and
none of them know you, and
this guy?
suddenly they all hate you.
And they've got, oh my God. Kudos to your ego for surviving
I mean,
that.
it was genuine. I was actually on tour at the time, like on the other side of the world, and it was just like, I mean, honestly, genuinely a harrowing experience. It was.
And it's too big. Like that audience is 1,000 times bigger than the audience you need for your music, or you want for your music or whatever. And it's so the idea of just finding your people, finding your little section of society and engaging with those people is kind of, maybe that's I don't know.
That's the key.
I'm kind of the thing I'm most interested in life at the moment is just trying to work out how to live,
right.
What is a good life? What does it look like? Because I think there's been points in my life where it looked like people say you could make more money if you would just be a bit more normal, James, kind of toe the line. You could make loads of money. And looking back, you have to think like, why didn't, I could not be worrying about making rent if I'd only done that. But you're only here once, aren't you? So it's
totally.
Well, as far as I know. I mean,
yeah. Presumably, as far as the information available. Let's talk about music again, or specific music. Tell me about the trip you made to Morocco with 13 Points in 2014. I read quite a bit about this. It sounds like a very interesting experience. Yeah. And a pivotal experience.
Yeah. I mean, for me, part of this, because this is on this journey of becoming a live musician.
Right, exactly.
This is probably like the moment that, because it was, so a young couple scraped together funding and put this trip together where they'd arranged 2 Gnawa Malems and 4 Western musicians to meet, Biosphere, Vessel, Floating Points, and me. And I would have said no, apart from I realised I had loads of records by Mahmoud Guinea in my collection already. It's like, I felt like an imposter. Like, I can't go and do that. Like, who am I to do that? I'm not a real musician. All this.
The usual.
Yeah. And we all got there. We'd all brought our fancy bits of kit, and Vessel had his machine drum, and Floating Points had just bought incredibly expensive string quartet microphones for some reason. And I brought my modular, and it was all set up. I'd been studying, I'd made a max patch to do Gnawa rhythms. I'd been studying how their swing works. And
really? Wow. Okay.
Super interested. Like, let's do that in a minute. I'll tell you the story.
Sure.
I'll tell you about the maths of their rhythms. And we sat down to jam together in this little room, and they started playing, and I started the machines, and they drifted out of time because their music is free time. Like, they start slow, speed up. So they're not going to follow a drum machine. That would ruin it. And so I was trying to steer the drum, and in another room, Vessel was trying to steer his machine drum and like beat match it to them. And we met up, and I was like, I don't know if this is not working for me. And he was like, I was in tears, mate. I was so embarrassed. It was awful. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. This is terrible. And then, so we all kind of went away like, how am I going to live up to this? Because these people are amazing musicians. It's brilliant. And I just feel like an idiot just sitting here with an expensive box making shit noise.
Yeah, exactly.
So I stayed up literally all night experimenting, patching it. And I made an instrument that was like I can play this. It's like I had some quantizers there and I could pick notes and then a ribbon and I could kind of play sort of pitch and expression and spread it out using a make noise thing to kind of spread out and make chords at the same time. Felt like, okay, I can feel...
So no keyboard?
No, just a ribbon and these 3 quantizers and sort of tapping notes in on them. And the make noise thing for like chord shape or something. And then we sort of sat down outside by the swimming pool of this villa and literally it was just the one take. And it was like, oh yeah, he's in that key, I'll do that chord, and I'll throw that note in. And he starts, and I was lucky the notes I'd put in the quantizers, like really, like, thanks. And I don't even know which god it was, but
yeah, right.
But, and it felt good, and it was like building up. And then Mahmoud Guinea, who was like 60 something at the time, kind of nodded to his band to like hush with the percussion, and he like orchestrated this big breakdown section in the middle of it and then nodded when they came back in, and the drop was like his moment. And it was like just pure like, oh my god, it's been good up to this point, don't f it up, James, don't f it up, don't f it up, don't just and I don't know what I'm doing because it's just a ribbon and some lights and it's all analog and I've not really had time to just pure adrenaline and fear and excitement, and like thinking this is like one of the most beautiful things I've ever played on, all happening in this one moment. Like, me, like this is what I want to do with my time. This is that was the most improvisational thing I'd ever done, I think, at that moment in time. And listening back to the recording, it was like, fuck, I think this is my favorite.
It actually sounds good.
Yeah, like not only it sounds good, but I think it's kind of one of my favorite things I've done. The energy of it, the way it flows, the feeling, kind of they're nice chords. I'd like.
What's the name of the track?
Bania.
Yeah. So I listened to that yesterday, having read about it, and it's great.
For me, that's I mean, obviously, the memory of it is part of my experience of listening to it. So
sure.
And that was can't go back after that.
Right. Yeah,
that was so Gnawa music. Because for me, trance is a big thing of everything. Like before I knew what trance music was, when I was a kid learning piano, I would just sit there playing like 3 chords over and just rattling away and just head nodding and just going into myself and zoning out. And then when I discovered electronic music, that was what I liked about it. This feeling of just zoning into it or something. Yeah,
I read a quote of yours when you said basically that the breakdowns are sufficient in themselves, right? And that's what trance basically is. And by the way, you mentioned we are almost exactly the same age. My entry point into dance music was also trance, and absolutely that quote of yours just, I mean, it made so much sense to me, because like listening to like, I mean, I've talked a lot about trance and how the early trance is amazing, and before the Dutch guys got hold of it, it was awesome. Yeah. But like, stuff like early Platypus records, and like, I mean, the specific DJ mixes that got me into it, the Carl Cox Fact 1, and like, those big kind of just like cinematic breakdowns, and but almost all of those records, as you said in that quote, the drop is a massive disappointment, right? It's just like it just comes out with this like lame kick, and it's like
kind of quite hard to do a trance, like keep all the trancey melodic atmospheric bits going and have the dancey kind of energy, and to have chord changes while you've got a 4/4 kick.
Yeah, it all sounds terrible.
Terrible. Yeah, it's like kind of that's a part of why I can't make records in that vein anymore. It's because I've done every trick I can think of to get away with doing that, and there's nothing left that wouldn't be repetitious for me in it, I guess. But I found another way to get the same feeling. And I think that's the real answer to Yeah. So this trance, the experience of being like really zoned into music. Around the time I met the human timing scientist, I also got lucky and met some other scientists who are into like brainwaves and like that. And your brain lines up with, when you've got a stimulus, if you put a strobe light in front of someone's eyes, their brainwaves sync with that strobe light. If you're listening to music, it kind of syncs in a nebulous way. If 2 people playing together, their brainwaves sync. Everybody in the crowd, their brainwaves are in sync. It's quite a beautiful thing. But the feeling of trance, I think, is just your brainwaves being locked into something, that your whole consciousness is kind of clocked to the music. And different kind of, if you look at there's this thing called Euclidean rhythms. Loads of sequences use Euclidean rhythms, and it's the most efficient way of getting N energy pulses into M slots. That's what the algorithm is. So in the Large Hadron Collider, they're using Euclidean rhythms to put energy in there, whatever they're spinning around, because it's like the mathematical most efficient. Yeah. But those rhythms are the root of every folk music of the whole world. Of course it is, because it's the most efficient way of getting people to kind of groove with it. Right. So of course music will be the most efficient. It's just evolved to be. And so Gnawa music is not unique, but it's quite unusual in that they have things like triplets and eighths at the same time. So you got da-ga-da, nice cup of tea. That's the trick to, and that's, so you've got like twice as much rhythmic information going into your brain as a normal rhythm or something, like just loads, like we could, I could get pen and paper out. We could go maths on this if you want.
I'm sure that's the best podcasting.
No, it's not gonna. You're not gonna be number one in the UK with that.
No, unfortunately not.
Mr. Beast doesn't have maths lectures on his.
He probably doesn't. No.
I'll wait for the phone call, I guess.
But you were saying you tried to model this in advance of your.
So yeah, I'd just been kind of messing around with sequences that did those kind of rhythms, and also like quite stretchy swing, like, because we just have lots of Western music just has one swing of Logic 16th C or whatever it is, like this kind of the second 16th's delayed a little bit. Yeah. And in Gnawa music, sometimes they have swing where the middle of the bar is delayed. So there's loads of different ways to swing things. Yeah. And they all kind of, when you work through the maths of it, they're all a way of just getting more energy into the brain. Like swing is a way of getting the same beat with swing, puts more energy across as a sort of rhythmic entrainment thing. So that's why swing makes you want to dance, because it's putting more energy into your brain.
Right.
But this doesn't help you make hit records as unproof.
There's some hit records that have swing.
Yeah, I mean, but this knowledge is not you.
No, it's true.
Knowledge is
absolutely
just makes you boring at dinner.
Right. I mean, that's a bit harsh. But I mean, the experience of doing that session, it was a week, was it?
Yeah, and it was only a couple of days of actually playing together.
Right.
Really, yeah.
So that unlocked something significant, right? Yeah.
It made me feel like I could do it. I suppose it made me not feel like an imposter or something. And made me, and just made me realize that was something really, pushing yourself to your limit like that is really rewarding.
Sure.
And maybe in DJing, as a DJ, I'd been making myself say, at first I found it quite a difficult job because you get quite a lot of negative feedback. I mean, at the start of my DJ career, I just got people who are fans of Sasha and Digweed telling me I was doing it wrong.
Okay.
I was like, well, I'm not really trying to do the same thing as them, so it's not wrong. But, and so it was quite a stressful thing for me. And so gradually as I developed as a DJ, I got to this, I was very technical, I suppose, and like everything was in key, but to the nth degree, and kind of really, so I felt quite safe because I felt like I'm really in control of what I'm doing here. Everything sounds beautiful, the flow, I love all these records. I'd made it into quite a safe job to some extent, even though sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does. Yeah. You know what it's like.
Yeah, situational, yeah.
And this definitely felt more precarious and more surprising.
Like you say, I mean, like you said before, like DJing is improvisational. Like the best DJs usually, that's a slight generalization, but like, yeah. I mean, I think as an art form, generally speaking, if it can be called an art form, which it probably can.
No, it can, definitely. Yeah, don't.
Like
it's all art. It's definitely all art.
Yeah. People on this show tend to say that it is. Yeah, but I agree with
that. Why not?
I agree, yeah. So,
it's this kind of class thing that only people who went to university can make art, or it's only art if it's for rich people. Like folk culture is also art. Definitely.
Yes, yeah. Well, it can be at least anyway. Yeah.
I think it just all is.
That's okay. So I've been trying to pin down what my best definition of art is, and I think instinctively my definition. I think I have a different yardstick than is typically used, because it sounds like you're of the opinion that if the intention is there, then it is that's what it is.
If you're trying to communicate through a medium, that's probably art.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that is certainly a common way of looking at it. Absolutely. I suppose my instinct is that I want it to be more difficult to achieve, basically.
No, I want to remember when Jeremy Corbyn said there's a song in everyone,
Right.
and that awful woman from the which one is it? New Statesman was like,
Right.
don't encourage them, Jeremy.
Okay.
And I thought, I'm
Right.
with Jeremy on this.
Well, okay, yeah. So I suppose that's a different thing, right? Because I mean, I absolutely, and this kind of like ties back into an area we were getting near with the AI thing. Like certainly the music tech making it easier to make music, right? I think that's unambiguously great, and it's unambiguously great that people are doing it and people are able to make records, right? The problems come with distribution, in my opinion, in terms of work. So it's one of the best things ever, making music, making art, making music. Or okay, making music, but is that music necessarily art? I suppose that's the kind of where I depart slightly.
Yeah, so I think if someone plays with like Tim Exile's latest tool and makes some music, that's art, 100% definitely. Whereas if someone types a prompt into a big American multinational's website and something comes out of it, that's not. And
What about using splice loops in Ableton? That's somewhere in between those two things.
If you've done, yeah, I think the once you've started making choices of your own,
right?
it's your own
Creative choices. Yeah.
The idea of prompting. I remember when I was starting out, there were lots of people.
People would argue that is also a creative choice. But sorry, carry on.
So, well, yeah, there were a lot of famous DJs who made records with an engineer. How's that different to prompting an AI? Because they would literally come in and go, can you make it a bit like that? And that's AI is only making it a bit like something that exists. So if that was art, then is that, I don't know. I don't like to think about AI. I quite like to just not engage.
Do you use ChatGPT for anything?
I asked it a programming query a little while ago and its answer was so stupid I thought I'm never going to use it again.
Okay.
But it did actually, no, I asked it 2 programming queries and it taught me a maths function I didn't know on the second one. So it's maybe it's quite a good way of digging into documents, or it could be, I mean, I'm sure there's uses for it, but I can only see it through the lens of like capital and power and these rather depressing narratives.
Yeah, I mean, I use it basically as a search engine mostly, and it's basically better than Google. I've found anyway. Certainly, if I'm researching a topic, it's not infallible. Certainly not. Absolutely makes mistakes. What I quite like about it actually is that you can talk it through its mistakes and have a kind of conversation with it. And whilst I recognize what you're saying about, multinational companies and big money and all the rest of it, and that does make me deeply uncomfortable, certainly. The fact that there isn't someone at one of those multinationals telling it directly what to do, like there isn't one, but they can't just like flick a switch and it'll do something different. That's an aspect of it that I find interesting, and enables it to sit slightly outside of that sort of big tech corporation paradigm. Maybe that's me kind of coping with it or something, but like, because it is a bit different. It's not the Google search engine, which the algorithm of which can be tweaked to bring something to the top. It isn't that.
Yeah, but it can be influenced.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's influenced by what it trains on. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like its pre-prompt thing is very. Yeah. I feel like it's a thing in between you and the actual information. And I feel like, do I trust it to mediate?
Sure. I mean, that's definitely.
Do I trust that company to, if you, in Chrome, you type the Pirate Bay into Chrome, it says that's not a website. But if you type it into Firefox, it's a website. So I don't trust Google in the slightest.
Yeah. Right.
Like, is it a browser or is it not a browser? Like, I mean, not endorsing the Pirate Bay, but I do think if you pretend you're a browser, you should browse.
Oh, totally. And also the dark web, like, that to most people doesn't exist at all. I mean, if I wouldn't necessarily endorse using the dark web to buy drugs, and perish the thought of anyone ever doing that. But if you do ever do that, you are just awoken to this parallel universe.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's lots of parallel universes out on the street, I suppose, as well, or in your community,
Absolutely.
as well. Those are interesting. That's yeah. Coming back to the yeah, let's not talk about the AI anymore.
Yeah, no, we don't have to.
Really
I didn't mention it. You were the one that mentioned it. I wanted to go on to the animal spirits. So, animal spirits, was that, to what extent was the animal spirits a direct result of the process in which we just discussed?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was kind of like one end point of that. It was like I played with all these different people touring the previous record. I'd had like Etienne Jaumet come and play sax sometimes, and then other guests come in and stuff. And kind of, yeah, and I've just been loving like playing with other people and discovering. At that time, I got really into like Pharoah Sanders and Don Cherry and the Organic Music Society stuff that Don Cherry did. There's a video on YouTube, I guess it's still on YouTube, of him on Italian TV. I think it's Organic Music Theatre. And they're like sat on the floor around in a circle playing this music, which is folky, trancey. It's like a bit jazz, but it's mostly folky, trancey kind of music. And like really beautiful. And the first time I heard it, I was a bit like, because he's talking about like Krishna loving you and Jesus loving you and whatever, and it's oh come on, it's a bit happy clappy. It was a bit cringe at first, and now I just listen to it, just my heart is full of love for it, and it's like really beautiful, and I don't see it in that way anymore. You don't need to, you can just let go. You don't have to. Someone can be quite smug and they've seen the light and spiritual enlightenment, and you can just let them have it. Like I haven't, but that's fine, Don. The music's great.
Yeah.
And so I got into that idea of like I thought I'll just try and make like a trance spiritual jazz band or something, like a synth spiritual jazz band. And looking back at it, half of it works as that, I guess, or something. Okay. It works as its own thing. And it kind of, you can see what I was trying to do. And that session was stressy but fun. I wrote a Dogma manifesto of truth in music.
Okay.
Of like only things that were recorded in real time, all one take, no overdubs, no fixes. Right. Like the opposite of that classical recording.
Yeah. So how much of that was improvised?
It was all, well, it was like I had my loops, my parts all kind of planned already for the sessions, and we'd not really rehearsed, but we kind of played through, and some of the songs I'd written dots on the score and told people, oh, this is the shape of the melody, and just do with it what you will. And they were all like 2 or 3 takes of each song, and then just pick the best one, kind of. So the shape of it was improvised, like how many breakdowns, how many peaks and troughs, and what happened. Yeah, all that was.
And were you directing?
Yeah, but not in a. So directing or conducting
or whatever.
Yeah, I'm an anarchist, so I try not to be. I don't want to be a hierarchical leader. Right. but it is my project, and I was paying them, so yes, I was a hierarch. I was, but I'd like to pretend I'm not.
Okay. Right. Reluctant dictator.
It's like, these are all really good musicians and like really interesting people, so the less instructions I give them, the more of them comes out. And the thing with Vasav is really nice, because this is the first thing where we're just totally equals. Right. And I'm not in charge of anything, and he's not in charge of anything. Yeah. That changes it. And to some extent, taking that away with the Animal Spirits, it's like, this has got to be great. It's my album. With the recording sessions with Vasav, it's just like, I'm having fun with my friend, and whatever comes out. And I'd lost that kind of, that feeling hovering over my head that I should make a great work, James, that's an unhelpful feeling. And I think that's the thing that I'm going to take from that record forward.
The most recent record, you mean?
Yeah, that I'm going to, the next thing I do, I'm sort of planning to make an insignificant record, like a
no comment.
Yeah, I'm sure
So that could probably happen. So if you look at the Spotify, that's all.
Yeah, they're all I
wanted to ask you about the one with the long name. Imagine this is a highly high dimensional space of all possibilities. Yeah. I think it's brilliant.
Thank you.
Honestly.
It might be the best one. I don't know if it's the best. At the time, I said it was the best one. Then I came back to thinking The Inheritors was the best one. Now I think the one with Vasav is the best one.
recency bias, maybe.
Yeah, it rotates.
I mean, it's good as well, but I mean, like, tell me, the story of making that sounded kind of difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it was a difficult bit of life for everyone, wasn't it? That
during COVID,
yeah,
right?
2019 was a bit rubbish, wasn't it? But,
yeah,
2020,
yeah,
it was. Yeah, and also, so we'd run out of money halfway through doing up our house, so the house had no roof and we had no money.
Okay,
we were living in the studio. The dog was dying. It's just not a good time. But and actually, I've just come from, we slept at the studio last night because we've got a new dog now and she's quite old as well. And when it gets to 25 degrees, her digestion goes to shit. So we have to go and sleep at the studio. And Gemma's office has got aircon. So we go in there and my studio room, the aircon's broken. So it's unbearable now.
Your new dog is a rescue dog who was previously owned by a homeless guy.
Yeah, she was a homeless guy. So she lived over this side of London all her life. And then he collapsed in the street. She got away. She got run over. She was in a rescue. She got pyometra. She got a leg infection. She got attacked by another dog in the rescue. Her owner then died. Then we rescued her. Then she got cancer.
Wow.
And now she's sitting on a memory foam mattress with my girlfriend having a lovely time.
Wow. So she's good.
She's a great character. It's really, it's nice. Yeah.
That's good.
But coming, like, last night sleeping at the studio, we were both really reminded of that period of time where I wrote that album. There's something really nice about it. Like, you're in this like weird space full of sort of equipment and crap, and it's falling down industrial building, and like, just kind of creating, and this like kind of knowing that you're not, I don't know what it is about it. It just felt like we're really, it's like the Bohemian Dream or something. You're sitting there playing on your synthesizer and there's a beautiful woman and a dog in the next room. It just feels like we're living the good life. Yeah.
Amazing. The conversation I had previously that I alluded to earlier was with a therapist. And one of the things we talked about was the degree to which pain and suffering is inherent in the creative process. And whenever I talk to therapists about this, they say, no, it's definitely not, and we shouldn't think about it like that. And that's totally fair and legit. But there is at least a grain of truth to that trope, isn't there? Or is there, do you think?
Yeah. I know in my own, like, I've had a therapist, and I've been miserable at points in my life, and I've also been like lost in point. I sort of feel like I don't know anyone who wouldn't benefit from having therapy relative. I sort of think that a functioning society would provide that for everybody as a minimum. But that seems like it's a luxury, really, isn't it? But
I believe in Argentina, it's very, very common.
That's good.
Apparently that's the country that has the highest density of therapists and people.
Because it's like an opportunity to keep looking at what you're doing while you're doing it. And so in my case, I understand that music is like a way for me to communicate when I'm not so good at other means of communication. And I suppose some of my early life gave me things that I needed to get out in some way, I think. I don't know. So to some extent, some of that has come from like, difficulty or pain or, things that would be characterized as like negative experiences or emotions. But then you sort of alchemize it. That's the thing about.
That's the tricky bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, with in that specific situation, how much of the surroundings and how much of your kind of day-to-day experience around making that record, how much of it was significant, if at all? I mean, did it colour the music in any?
I think
in those sort of kind of way?
I think it definitely did. It's very hard to, because the one before as well, like what I was going through mentally and my journey through life and my relationships with people, family or whatever, that really coloured it. But in hindsight, I projected a lot of stuff onto the music, but then that made me finish the music in a certain way. The fact that I put this song is about this set of emotions into it, and then kind of just the way you play it, the way you arrange it, even the way you mix it is kind of affected by what you've put on it. And it's funny that that does communicate through. I don't really want to say exactly what. There was one song on the Animal Spirits record that to me really represented something that I'd gone through that was like difficult and negative. And after the record came out, someone wrote to me on Facebook, like, I've been going through this thing. This one song really helped me. I was like, how have you connected the same thing that I projected onto the song? It's not in the title. It's not in the
similar.
It's like it's exactly the same. He went through the same experience with his relationship to his family and stuff as I did, pretty much.
Yeah.
And this song, it didn't make.
A piece of instrumental. Yeah.
It's just instrumental synthesizer music.
Yeah.
How's that? So there's something quite cool about that.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, and it's intangible and it's impossible to ever deliberately create or touch or So the fact that you get these little gifts from the universe,
totally,
all these things it's nice.
That record, I believe there was a gap in the middle between making the bulk of it and getting it finished. Is that right?
The
one with the long title.
The one with the long title.
The reason I've actually written it down wrong, so every time I look at this bit, I have to correct it mentally in my mind.
Oh, I see. So
imagine this is a high-dimensional space of all possibilities.
Yeah.
That was a quick way of saying.
Which is actually like an AI is a high-dimensional space of all possibilities.
We're not talking about AI, James. Up off limits.
Yeah.
But there was a gap. Is that right?
There was a kind of, like, I wrote it all and then kind of didn't think it was finished. And then just kind of, oh no, it is, James. Of course it is.
So it actually was done.
It was like loop. It was like takes. And then I'm going to do a real take of this. You can't do a real take of things.
Especially not 2 years out.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. So it's truthful. It's another truthful record. There was one song where I'd literally just taken the stereo 2-bus out of my modular, through like a tube distortion that was too much, and there was one bad part in there, and I spent like 3 days with like spectral sound extraction trying to remove this one part. So, having spent like months trying to recreate the part, it's just I can't get there, so I had to just spend ages like editing out the wrong bits out of that.
Right.
Like one frequency at a time and little stripes in the spectral view. Really
Nice.
It's worth it though. It's
cool,
I think. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, man, the album is, it's really, really great. It's funny because I sent it to mention that we're about the same age, and we, I believe, spent a lot of time in our teenage years listening to the same sorts of albums. So like Life Forms, we were talking before this about Insides by Orbital, these records. Anyway, so I sent that album to an old school friend of mine, who spent those formative years smoking weed and listening to those albums, and he immediately said, Orbital, and life forms. So you can really hear it in that, but it doesn't sound. I don't think it doesn't sound. It's very much the vibe of it, rather.
Yeah,
it
rather
doesn't sound like it. It's
yeah. I mean, to some extent, I think my next record, I'll just try and make Life Forms again, because every time I try and make Life Forms, it doesn't come out like Life Forms.
I mean, Life Forms is an unbelievable piece of work. It really is. I mean, it's underappreciated. People don't hear people talking about it too much.
It's weird that Future Sound of London don't seem to sort of made it into the canon in that sense.
Right.
And to me, they're a lot more interesting than some of the other people who are in the canon.
Yeah.
Not that it's a competition, but
no, it's true though. Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, they're rarely spoken of in the same breath as.
They went a bit mad, didn't they? Well, not. They did a similar career path to me. They're like, everyone loves our electronic music, let's form a prog band.
yeah.
So that might have had an effect on their, but good on them for it. Yeah.
Awesome. James, this has been great. Just to finish up, satisfy my curiosity, what other albums did you listen to when you were a kid, apart from those two we just mentioned? What were the other key?
So the big one for me was this compilation, Trance Europe Express.
Ah, yes.
First one of them. And every track on that is just incredible. It's like really, and because of that, that's got a Black Dog track on it. And then those early Black Dog albums, for me, were like my favourite of the sort of Warp world, I guess. What else? I did get a bit into drum and bass for a while.
What kind of drum and bass?
Well, like both kinds. Like
so country and western.
Yeah, exactly. My friend Mitchell at school gave me a tape of just like ragga drum and bass, like the
jungle
fun kind. Yeah, the fun kind. And I've still got these CDs, and they come on random play occasionally, and they're just dire, the intelligent kind. When they started trying to program their own breaks, it's like you cannot program your own breaks.
Yeah, that was a
That was
regrettable
a bad moment.
Yeah. Okay, this is probably a good time to finish this.
Yeah, that's a terrible end. I hope you cut that bit, to be honest.
James Holden, thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for your time. Awesome.
Music, not diving, with Scuba.